Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of Big Sound Small Town, the podcast that spotlights the talented and diverse musicians in small towns and communities. This season we're branching out to include the community of people who make it possible for musicians to be able to perform their music, the producers, the recording engineers, the venue owners, and many others, and as always, the small town musicians. Remember, small town doesn't mean small talent. Hear their stories. You may find it funny that my guest, Mark Fain, has no recorded music on his interview. That's because the man has 7 Grammys, has played with Dolly Parton, Ricky Skaggs, Alison Krauss. It's just, the list goes on and on and on. You can find his music all over the internet. Good example, Get Up John from Bluegrass Rules with Ricky Skaggs. It's there. But he has a fantastic story, so just hearing the story will make you seek out the music. Today, my guest on Big Sound Small Town is award-winning bassist and producer Mark Fain. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Hey, it's glad to be here.
Yeah, well, what's the current situation there in Nashville?
Well, it's just like every place else. There's not much going on at all. Everything, definitely no live shows or any of that. There's some internet things. Everybody's trying to do that, but that's about it. Hardly any sessions are going on. I've had a few overdubs here at the house that people sent me stuff to play on, but other than that, it's pretty slow right now.
So I take that as, I guess you're in the same shape all musicians are.
Yeah, I think we're all, I've been in touch with John Leventhal up in New York City, he's a friend of mine, and they're not doing, they can't get out at all. And then some of my buddies out in Los Angeles, Herb Peterson, I talked to her quite a bit. John Jorgensen, staying in touch with them, but nobody's doing anything. Everybody's home. A few little overdubs that come by the house, by their same thing at all of us. We're all kind of got the same story.
I mean, financially, I guess it's impacting you.
Yeah. I was lucky that I had about 6 weeks at the first part of this year. I was out with Lyle Lovett, and Lyle pays you pretty well.
Yes, he does.
So I was able to stock up some, and still nothing's coming in. I've had couple of royalty checks, from ASCAP and all that, but no work's coming in.
Yeah.
And I don't know when it will. I mean, live shows. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? I know. And it's
and being a bass player sitting around the house playing music by yourself is not a good thing.
No, it's not. Trust me, I'm also a bass player, and that's not a good thing. No,
it gets pretty boring pretty quick.
It does, and it's well, you've had a pretty incredible music journey. You want to take it to how music started with you?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in East Tennessee around Kingsport, Tri-Cities area, and
musically a good area.
Yeah, it is. I had an uncle that had a music store in East Tennessee. He was the first Fender dealer in East Tennessee. So he knew a lot of people. They used to supply George Jones and a lot of country bands would come through and get amps and guitars, and things from them. Back then, the interstate ran right through my hometown of Rogersville.
Oh yeah.
But
that is a small town.
Yeah, and that led me to meet a lot of people to come to Nashville. But that saying, he knew a lot of people, so I had a lot of influences of. I would play in church and play gospel music, and then I would play bluegrass, with him and other players around. And,
so you didn't.
I would also play, was into, country music and even like Django Reinhardt and swing music, jazz music, And that's kind of was my earliest influence, was just playing with him. And
what was your first instrument?
Well, I started out on guitar. I wanted to be a guitar player.
Yeah.
I wanted James Burton was my hero.
That's a good one, yeah.
But I had he had an upright bass that sat in the corner. He had, with him having that music store, he had hundreds of instruments, and that's not exaggerating. But
right.
There was an upright bass that always sat in the corner. And one Sunday night, after church, about 9 o'clock, I guess it was, I went over to his house and started playing upright, and that's when I started playing bass, and I kind of got hooked on it.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, that was my earliest playing of an upright bass,
How old would you have been in that time close?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was 6, and that would have been, I would have been about 9 years old.
That's great, man. That's good. That's an early start, no doubt.
Yeah, and I'm still learning. I'm still, there's, it's a lifelong pursuit.
I've never met a musician that was worth the time of day who didn't keep learning. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah.
All musicians at some point have had teachers, mentors. I mean, it's hard to do by yourself.
Oh yeah, it is, and I learned something every time I played with somebody,
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter their skill level.
Well, that's true.
You can learn something, somebody's approach to a sound or a sound that they get off an instrument, themselves.
Right.
Is
did I guess the first time you were playing music live, would that have been through the church?
Yeah, it would have been. Trying to think. It would have been. There was actually what happened was there was our little church my mother's church had a little concert, on a Sunday night singing, and this group came, and then they were just a local group in my hometown that everybody knew, and they came over to our house after church for. Just some coffee and dessert and stuff. And I started playing guitar. They wanted to hear me play guitar. And then about, a couple of weeks later, they called and said they needed a bass player. Would I be interested in going? And that was, and, I was probably 12 years old at the time.
That's great.
So that was my first, and I was hooked. Since then, I never wanted to do anything else but that.
Was that like old time Southern gospel?
Yeah, it was. And then shortly after that, when I was 14, my uncle played fiddle and steel guitar and stuff. But he would go out with this bluegrass group called the Gospel Sounds. They were a local bluegrass group, but Dwayne Wilder and Ralph Hurley, it was their group. They were kind of known in my area. But that's I was watching this documentary on Jimmy Martin, and Jimmy Martin talked about Dwayne Wilder and Ralph Hurley. That's who he grew up playing music with.
Oh.
Well, and that's who my uncle was playing with. So I would go out and start playing bluegrass with those guys.
Oh, okay.
And it was, I never really, I remember a few years ago I did a workshop for Berkeley.
Yeah.
When I was playing with Ricky, and they asked how I got interested in bluegrass, and I'm sure it's the same way with you. It's just part of where we grew up. You don't really get interested in it. It's just there, and you become, from the time you're born, you're in it.
It is, and actually, in a lot of ways, it's your, I don't know if it's your only choice, but it's your best choice if you want to play. I mean,
yeah, you're exactly right. You know, because I was like every other kid. I was, I wanted to be in a rock band,
sure.
you know, to be with the Beatles and or whatever,
right.
you know. But I just always liked every kind of music, and I never really put a label on any kind of music, you know.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I'm not too much on labels or competitions. I mean,
no, yeah, me neither. Me neither.
It's music's there to be played and enjoyed, and
yeah, I think so too. I think of playing with other people. That's the enjoyment, not to try to play better than somebody else, but to try to make a group of people making a sound together that's different than the other group of people. You know.
Yeah. A contribution.
That's the joy of it.
Yeah,
for me, you know.
Yeah, a musical contribution is part.
Yeah.
The way I look at playing live music or music with other people is, what part can I contribute to this?
Exactly. That's the way I look at it. And I know there's a lot of there's some competition and stuff, but usually when that starts, I'm gone.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you seem to have no shortage of jobs prior to this.
I'm lucky. I'm cheap and lucky.
Well, now, did you finally decide at some point I'm moving to Nashville, or I mean, how did that happen?
Well, I wanted to move to Nashville from when I was a kid. I mean, actually, when I said I was 6, or when I was a kid, started playing guitar and playing with other people, I was hooked, and I had wanted to move to Nashville since I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
And so pretty much after graduation, I moved to Nashville, and and I had already met, was already kind of going to the Opry and stuff. I met Jimmy Gaps, and I met Skaggs. I'd known Ricky since I was 14.
Oh, okay.
And we, he was always really nice to me, as a kid. And
so you had contacts before you went?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. That's a lot of people's success is just contacts and becoming friends. And, that seems to be mine,
Well, there again, I take it that chemistry and the ability to get along with people is big on getting jobs in Nashville. I mean, talent. Oh, yeah. Everybody's talented, so it comes down to other things, really.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's not like I guess there's a wealth of musicians around where you're at.
Oh yeah, there is.
But Nashville, it's kind of who you become friends with and who you can get along, and then you get recommendations. And it's once that starts, it just leads to other things.
What was your first job when you got there?
Well, I actually went out on the road with this gospel group, because I had played so much of that with, and it was a group called the Singing Americans, and they. And so I did that for a while, and then I ended up playing with a couple of more gospel groups. I played with the Nealons, and then there was a group for a year. And that year I was with him, we played 300 concerts.
Whoa, man, that is a lot. I mean.
And then so there was this group, Gold City, that I went out with them. I stayed with them for 4 years. And they owned the studio. And then that, from there I started doing a lot more session work and stuff.
Right.
And then I had actually left Gold City because my sessions were going so well. I would be in the studio Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then leave with them to go out on the road and play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday. So it just there was no time. And when I left, my sessions really picked up, and that's when Ricky called me.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, do you remember the first session you played on? I mean,
well, yeah. Well, the first session I ever played on, I was 15.
Wow.
And I played guitar, bass, and drums.
Well, they got their money's worth out of you, that's for sure.
Well, I guess. And, but
Were you nervous?
Oh, well, yeah. By that time I had already been coming to Nashville some.
Right.
I had met Jimmy Capps on a session,
Right.
and just a session with some friends of mine that had come down to record.
Right.
And I would go down and watch sessions with him, that he was doing, and got to meet, a lot of the Nashville A-team players during that time and stuff.
Well, that does help. I mean, it was not like you were going in, the first time and going, God, this is harder than what I thought it would be.
Well, it was harder. Playing in the studio and playing live, you have to learn how to do both.
Yeah, there's a big difference. I agree totally.
You have to play calmer in the studio, but you have to live. You can't play that calmer. It's just boring.
True.
And you can't understand that until you kind of get into doing both. Yeah. And even to this day, there's a lot of great session players that I've played live with. It just never feels quite right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, you're one of the people who get to do both, and I think when you get to do both, then you do realize the difference.
Yeah, you do.
Because you're right. I've been around incredible session players who I almost was clueless about playing live.
Oh yeah. There's an excitement. When I went with Skaggs, playing with Ricky, and he called, and it was it was the country band. We hadn't even started playing bluegrass yet.
Okay, so you were there. You were there when he was country then.
Yeah.
Was that electric bass playing you were doing with him?
What? I'm sorry?
Were you playing electric with him?
Yeah, I sure was.
Okay.
I was playing electric, and then, because he knew that I played upright too, so
Right.
we started, I started taking my upright out and playing live playing upright live with the country on certain things,
Right.
like Wouldn't Change and a few songs, Cry My Heart All Over You with the country band. And when I went, my best buddy at the time was Sutton, was Brian.
Okay, yeah.
And so, I definitely want to get him in there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So when we started rehearsal for that tour that year with Ricky, Billy Joe Foster had left the band, and so we needed somebody, and I recommended Brian. I said, I've got this friend that just, he's the best acoustic guitar player I've ever heard.
Good old North Carolina boy.
Yeah, and I said, he can play. He's an awesome, incredible banjo player. Plays mandolin. He can sing. He plays fiddle. And Ricky said, "Well, I'll let's try him out." And I said, "Okay." And so I got him fixed up. And Brian went over to Ricky's house, and and obviously he got the job. After that rehearsal, Ricky said, "Well, you was right about one thing. He can play guitar."
That's funny. That's really funny.
And I said, "Well, I know." The funny thing about Brian, I met him when he was 18, and if he hears this, I don't know what he'll say, but he plays no better now than he did when he was 18. I mean, he was just amazing at 18.
That's funny. That's really funny. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what he has to say about that. So I guess during that time playing with Ricky was totally different than what it wound up. Okay, take the transition for me from the country Ricky to the bluegrass Ricky.
Okay, well, we had got booked to play the Lincoln Center in New York City, and they wanted. We had played. Ricky would still do the Ryman concert every year. The bluegrass nights, and he would just take a version of his country band.
Yeah, right.
And it was always good. I mean, it was a good. Obviously, Bobby Hicks was there, and Ricky, and Keith Sewell was in the band, and Keith had grew up playing bluegrass, but then, so that one year we were playing the Ryman, and it was me and Brian, and Ricky had got Mark Pruitt to come in, and Bobby. And Dennis Parker was in the band at that time, and Paul Brewster,
right?
Which was the Bluegrass Rules album. Anyway, it was really good band. We all loved playing with each other, and was just excited about playing music, and people liked it. And then shortly after that, a couple of months, we got booked at the Lincoln Center in New York City, and we did that, and it went over really big, and we got a big write-up in the New York Times, and then the next week, it's weird because we had 3 of these back-to-back. It was meant to be, but we did Wolf Trap up in Deanna, Virginia, same thing, and it got a big write-up in the Washington Post. Well, people started calling, wanting to book the Bluegrass Band. And, and I think Ricky, at the time, we were in like a transfer truck and 2 or 3 buses. Right. We had more people in the crew than we had in the band.
And that was a pretty big band.
It was a big, we had 10 people in the band. Yeah. And then plus all the crew. But, I think with the Bluegrass Band, we could all travel in one bus and stuff. But it was just fun. Ricky hadn't played bluegrass in a long time.
He had, yeah.
And he was excited about it,
I wondered if he, I wondered kind of how that happened. I mean, there you are, a country star, and then all of a sudden you decided you're going back to play bluegrass.
Well, there was just a lot of things lined up for that. With all of us getting together, with that band.
I can see why you want to play bluegrass with that band. I mean, who wouldn't?
Yeah. Yeah. It just all kind of lined up, and then Ricky had done a country record, and I don't know what happened, but it really didn't get a lot of promotion or anything. Well, about the same time we had started working on a bluegrass record, and it started getting a lot of interest,
Right.
And then Bill Monroe passed away, and there was just a lot of things lined up to push that band to play in more music.
And what was that album for my listeners?
It was Bluegrass Rules.
Yes, it
Bluegrass
was.
Rules.
That is a fabulous album. I mean, that is a bluegrass standard.
It's all live. It's totally live, singing and everything.
Wow.
I think we got better cuts on a lot of things, but it as a whole, that's what ended up on the record. But thank you. I'm proud to be on that record.
Yeah, I mean, I would be. That is just a fabulous. I did not realize it was one take stuff.
Yeah, it was totally live. They and everybody but me. We did it at Woodland Studio, which Gillian Welch owns now. They live there. I don't even think they have a studio there, but.
Right.
I was in a little drum booth, and then everybody else was out in the room. So it's all totally live.
Wow, that's super. When I think back on it, and it's just totally live. Wow.
Yeah, but and it was great. I mean, it was an exciting time for sure.
Yeah,
And things in Nashville were great too. So that was the other thing that helped the Bluegrass Band. At the time, we had the Nashville Network, and Opryland was still going on.
Yeah.
And we were on TV, just about every week somewhere, doing the Opry or on TV or Nashville Now or something. So there was a lot of interest in what Ricky and all of us were doing.
Yeah, I mean that was a good time. That was a really good time because. Actually, there was country and bluegrass coexisting, which is not always the case.
No, and it's sad. It should be, it should be together.
Yeah, it should be. But then, gosh, that's a pretty good start to be with Ricky, and I mean, so I'm not really certain where to go from how. That album won some awards, right?
Yeah. That album won a Grammy,
right? And
it won. It won an IBM. I don't think it won. I don't think it won Album of the Year. He could have. I'd have to look and see. But that album won a Grammy. I think the next 7 albums that I did with Ricky won Grammys.
Wow. I mean, that's just that in itself is pretty incredible. But to be a part of the band doing that is, I mean, that says a lot for longevity in a act too. And Ricky, I mean,
every band has to have a great leader, and
right,
I think that bands that don't have leaders kind of, I don't know, you can kind of tell it, but, you know, Doyle Lawson's obviously been a great leader of all the great bands that he's had.
Obviously.
You know, and Ricky was too. Ricky knew how he wanted it played, and you know, he was right. And you just gotta. It was always interesting to see somebody come into the band, because Ricky will like to move the tempos up when he, you know, when somebody takes a solo, he wants that extra excitement,
right?
You know, and then he'll pull it back, and you got to follow him, and it just always feels great. You know?
Is he rigid in what he? Say you take your bass player, but I mean, I know you're going to play pretty close to this.
Yeah,
stuff, Brian, would Brian, he have parameters, or he just go for it?
No, no. When we was in the country band, Ricky wanted everything like the record,
right?
You know, because that's what people heard on the radio, and that's what we would do. And you know, obviously we would play like instrumentals like Will Hoss and stuff in the country band, and you know, the guys would take their solos. It would be different. No, but in the bluegrass band, there were certain things that he would want that were obviously needed to be there, you know.
Right.
But when you're solos and stuff, he didn't care.
That's right.
The farther out you went, the better he liked it.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's a good thing to know too. You know, well, that is. I guess when you were working with Ricky, you had little time to do anything else, or did you?
Well, you know what? Yeah, when I started, we only did 30. We were doing 30 shows that year.
No.
And you know, but we would do the Opry. But we ended up, as a whole, doing about 80 to 100 shows a year with him. And I still did sessions.
Oh, okay.
And you know, and I, you know, played on all of his records and played on his last country record.
Which there again, that's just a whole. I see that as just two entirely different gigs in a way.
Well, it is, you know, and but being with him and you know, breaking into sessions, it led to playing, you know, on other country records and and you know, and stuff that at the time, you know, that I was really into, you know.
That's good. I mean, that's excellent that you had time. I didn't. You know, it's hard to tell how much someone is out there touring. I mean, it's just one of those things that it's kind of hard to keep track of, and I didn't know if there was any time in there for anything else, but obviously there was.
Yeah, you know, like, Ricky kind of tours all year long, but he doesn't do any long runs. He'll do, you know, 3 or 4 days at the most. Lots of times it's one date. You know, you might fly out to Oregon or someplace for a Saturday date, then back home.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And but you know, like when I go out. I've been playing with Ry Cooder now.
I was going to ask you about that. That's too cool.
And we go out for like 3 weeks at a time.
Oh, okay.
And but when it's scattered out over about, you know, 4 months or so. So we'll go out for 3 weeks and then we're home for 3 or 4 weeks. You know.
Oh well, while we're on Ry. So Ry and Ricky, you did that, right?
Yeah, I sure did.
Which is there again. I always thought that was a really different combination.
Well, you know, well, Ricky loves Ry, and vice versa. We were at the Grammys when they met, and you know, we had won a Grammy. And so just Ricky and I were there, and we went back and, you know, and did the thing. And coming out, Ry Cooder had won a Grammy for the Buena Vista Social Club.
Right, yeah, wonderful project.
And so we walking down the hall, and Ricky turns around. He says, "Back there's Ry Cooder." And I turn around, and Ricky just takes off running. He wanted to meet him, you know, because he just loved Ry. And you know, so that's how they met. They had just kind of always stayed in touch. And Ry, you know, Ry knows. Well, he's like us. You know, he doesn't think that there's any difference between bluegrass and gospel and rock and roll, and if it's good jazz or whatever.
True, I agree. Yes, his tastes are really broad.
Yeah. And so anyway, he had called me about playing on a record and that he was producing, and for Carly Ritter, John Ritter's daughter.
Right.
She was doing, and her. So she was doing a record. And anyway, in the meantime, he said, I've got to play a show at Carnegie Hall for Roseanne Cash is putting on this thing, and I want to play country music. Would you play with me? And I said, sure. And he says, well, I think Ricky's going to play with us too. Oh, well, perfect. That'll be great. Well, a couple of days later, Ricky called just, to talk about it.
Right.
And all that stuff. And then said, we don't know who else is going to be in the band. Well, the Whites ended up being in it. Ry stays on YouTube watching all of this stuff all the time.
Oh, okay.
He's right now, he's really crazy about Paul Williams.
Hey, nothing wrong with Paul.
No, he's just crazy, which he loves his singing so much. But anyway, so he saw Ricky playing with the Whites, and yes, Ricky said, do you know the Whites pretty good? He said, yeah, I'm married to one of them.
That's funny. That's
and
really
so that's
funny.
how it all ended up. And we were only going to do, 3 or 4 shows, but I think we ended up doing about 40 shows that year.
Wow. I guess Roseanne was involved.
Well, Roseanne, she kind of got that whole thing started. She has a series at Carnegie Hall that she was doing on Southern music, where once every month or twice a month she would have a concert and host it, and it was whoever she wanted to bring into Carnegie Hall, and she wanted Ry to do something. And I ended up after the Ricky and Ry thing kind of ended,
right.
Ry called me up one day and said, he said, here, Ry's a really great guy to talk to. Really, you want to hear every word he says because it's always really funny, And he says, now here's something I want to tell you about.
That's great.
He said, Roseanne Cash called me and wants me to play a week of shows with her at SF Jazz in San Francisco. And I told her, yeah, I'd do it if she got me and Joaquin, his son.
Right.
And he said, I told her that, she said, well, that'll be great. He says, and I just want to play Johnny Cash songs. and Roseanne says, well, that's the thing I don't want to do. But we ended up doing it, as time went on and it all came about, we ended up doing it. And John Levin, I mean, it's all crazy. I mean, as I said earlier, how you kind of meet people.
Right.
I had produced an album on my hero, which was Charlie Haden, the great jazz bass player.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too. Yeah.
Well, anyway, we did. It just sounds like I'm dropping a bunch of names.
No, it's okay.
But we had. I went up with Charlie to do the David Letterman show, and I put the band together, and we ended up getting John Leventhal, Roseanne's husband,
right.
which is my favorite producer.
Right.
And and he played guitar, so John and I had become kind of acquaintances, but now we're really good friends. But anyway, so after the Ry and Roseanne thing we saw was going to happen, I was kind of the in-between guy between John and Ry and Roseanne, just kind of putting everybody happy, because they never played with Ry and didn't know how he was,
right,
and how it would be, but everybody just loved each other,
Well, that's fabulous, because that is just such talented musicians.
Oh, it's incredible, and there was we started rehearsing. We rehearsed, I think, for 2 days, maybe three. I think we rehearsed for 3 days, and on that show, because we didn't have anything together,
Right.
And we had to come up with arrangements. And after the first show, we needed another song, and so the next morning I get a message on my phone. It's John and Roseanne, and they wanted to do "I'll Walk the Line." Well, John had played it how he kind of wanted to play it, and it was just completely different than Johnny's.
Right.
And the night we played it, the first night, she got a standing ovation, and just stand there and see her, she started crying and being touched.
Sure.
It's just an amazing thing. I mean, that goes beyond just listening to a song.
I agree, totally. Yeah.
That's somebody's life. It was pretty moving.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. That's and that's a touchy thing that you and I could not go do that. But
no.
but she has that immunity to do that.
Yeah. And it's just and she always wanted to make it on her own, and she has. I mean, I told her, and this is true, when Ry called and asked me, told me this was going to happen and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to play these Johnny Cash songs with Roseanne Cash. I was thinking, well, why would we play these songs with Roseanne Cash? Oh, okay, well, that's Johnny's daughter. And I knew that,
Right.
But it just didn't strike me because I'd always thought Roseanne was her own artist,
Yeah, true. Yeah, and she is. I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, I've heard some of that too, and I thought that was kind of a weird project, but it's a great project,
Oh yeah, it's incredible. There's several. There's another performance of that we did. We went back out. We did that in May or June at SF Jazz, and then they booked us back to come out to the Opera House in San Francisco, and we did 2 or 3 nights. I can't remember. We were only supposed to do one night, and the first day sold out really quick, and then the second night, I think it was 2 nights. The second night sold out really quick too. And but Ry did a thing, "Don't Take Your Guns to Town," Johnny's song,
yeah,
and and it was totally different. You never knew what was going to happen.
That's great.
I mean, totally. You didn't know what the changes were going to be or anything. And that first night that Ry did it was so amazing. John Leventhal and I just looked at each other like, I can't believe we just witnessed that.
Wow.
It was so good.
I guess you've gotten to witness a lot of those. I mean,
well, there's a few times, there's a few performances that you'll never forget. That one with Roseanne and Ry. There's been several with Ry that I've
I can see where Ry. I mean, Ry is one of my heroes. This I'll make no bones about it. It's probably of all your jobs, that's probably the one I'm most envious of.
Well, I love Ry. He treats me like family.
That's great.
I talk to him every day. I'll talk to him today sometime. And
I mean, such an innovator.
It's amazing. You know what? And it never stops. It just he writes. He's writing songs every day, and so since we've been quarantined, he called me once. Said, "You getting plenty to eat?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Too much." I said, "Jessica just made a big pot of beans. My wife made a big pot of beans and some cornbread." And about an hour later, he sent me this video of him playing a song he wrote about beans and cornbread.
That's great. That's really good.
So.
That's all. I mean, that's just a great story there. I mean, I don't know many people that get Ry Cooder to write them a song about their supper.
Well, I know. I feel lucky about it. I'm glad I've got to know him and have him in my life. And his son and Susie too, his wife. They're all just great.
That's great. That's a great thing to know, really.
Yeah.
Now, okay, let's see. Somewhere in here, we've gone out and toured with Lyle Lovett in the large band.
Yeah. Well, I did the acoustic tour.
Yeah.
And there was talk about me doing some dates. Victor Krause, that's his regular job.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do the acoustic tour.
Right.
All of it. So. And there again, it's all become of people that I knew, which I knew most of the people in Lyle's band. But Ry and Lyle have the same. Ry Cooder and Lyle Lovett have the same manager.
Oh, really?
And he also manages Elvis Costello and James Taylor too, and a few other acts, that you might know. Right. But he, whenever Lyle, this came about, they got me. So.
Oh, I guess you played with Keith, didn't you? Is Keith still playing with him?
Well, yeah, Keith's still out there, but Keith wasn't out on this tour. Keith was supposed to be out with the Dixie Chicks.
Oh, yeah, okay. I forgot they're back in play now, too.
Yeah, and he's their band leader. So, and Lyle's just, golly, I mean, I don't know what to say about Lyle. He is an incredible person. I mean, just so thoughtful and you know, just really. I mean, he's really a genius. He's like Ry. I mean, they're on the same level. Yes. So creative and so nice. And you know, since it was an acoustic band, it was a small band, and Lyle wanted every song to have its own thing, you know.
Yeah.
So he would really listen to what everybody was playing every night and say, well, maybe tonight don't fill on this song, right. You know, because you played last time, so I don't want mandolin on this song. Right. You know, just play rhythm. And it just... I learned a lot of how you could play for 2 hours and never lose interest.
Yeah.
Anytime you play, you know.
He is one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Oh, it's just so, you know, and just him and I, which, I mean, he said he had been a fan of mine for a long time. I don't believe him on that. But anyway, him and I would stay up on the bus. You know, I go to bed pretty early, but we were staying up to 3 or 4 o'clock every morning talking.
That's
you know, and it was just so great. I mean, I can't say enough good things about him. The way and everybody in his whole organization. I mean, it's the best. You know, all the sound guys. I'm still talking to them and staying in touch, and his manager, road manager, and all that stuff. You know, all those guys are just the best.
Oh well, you know, I'm sure that he would surround himself with people like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you've actually worked for some pretty nice guys.
Yeah, you know what? I've always said, you know, man, that it's kind of the more famous guys are, the nicer they are. Yeah. You know, and there's a reason that a lot of these guys. I mean, they're all talented, but there's a reason that they're successful. They're good to people, and they care about people, and they're artists. You know, they want to create music. Right. And things. I know a lot of people don't get into that, but making people happy and enjoy and dancing and whatever.
Yeah, that's whatever. Great. I agree. Well, it makes a live show better too. People that do that make a live show better.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I've got to work with so many people. I can't believe it. I've got to work for sometimes, but it's and became friends, you know, with a lot of them and stuff. So.
Yeah, and then I see you have a Dixie Chicks connection.
Well, I did. I recorded with them some, you know, on a record. Ricky had produced this record. I've played with them a few times. I can't remember all the time, but Ricky had produced this record, Tribute to Bill Monroe, and they came in. And but I had met them before that, and they came in and did a song, and Bruce Hornsby had came in and done a song.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that too. You have a Bruce Hornsby. You have a Bruce Hornsby connection also.
Yeah, and so you know, and then that led, you know, John Fogerty was in. I played on the whole record. Right. There was different people coming in and out. John Fogerty came in. Joan Osborne came in. And did stuff. It was a great time, and you know, and working with Ricky on, you know, he produced it, but he would always let me be there and help him. He has a lot of ideas, right. You know, and so for somebody to be there and just remind him of what he did 2 minutes ago,
right.
And he builds great arrangements, you know, and stuff. But him and I always worked together on all these records, and he included me in on them.
Is that how you got in the producing part?
Yeah, it was, you know, quite a bit. I had, you know, session led a lot of records, you know, because I write charts and stuff. But then it led to me producing records, and Ricky recommended me, you know. Yeah. I played on a lot of records just because, you know, they would have Lynn Womack's records and stuff. Right. She'd have Ricky come in and sing, and he said, well, you need to get Bart to come in here and play bass on this song. It would sound a whole lot better, you know.
That's great. I mean, that is how it works, no doubt. I mean,
yeah, and so I got in on a lot of that by that way, you know, and kind of the same thing. I ended up, you know, working for Paul Worley some because, you know, of the Martina McBride records. I ended up playing on a couple of those records because Ricky was he wanted an acoustic track and wanted Ricky to kind of help produce it. Then the next thing I got called, you know, to go in and work on her record, right? You know, because of that. And a lot of things like that. You know, they just kind of tumble down like that.
And then, okay, you got another one here too. While we're at it, so Chris Hillman and John Jorgensen, how does that come about?
Well, okay, I met John at the Grammys. We were Ricky and I were out at the Grammys, just him and I, and where we were staying, Elton John's band was staying there. And so this was out in Los Angeles, and John lived in Los Angeles. But anyway, they were all meeting at the hotel there to go over to sound check for the Grammys, the day of rehearsal. And I walked out of the room, and there's John. And I had kind of met him just in passing, because I went out and worked on a record with this guy named Dennis Agajanian. He's a guitar player. He does all the Franklin Graham Crusades.
Oh, yeah, I know who he is. Yeah.
But he flew me out, and Byron Berline, and John was supposed to be on it, but he ended up, Elton had some rehearsals or something that he didn't. But anyway, so John and I met, and we became instant friends at the Grammys. And exchanged phone numbers, and you know, and just years later, John played at my wedding.
Oh, that's great.
Jorgensen. But anyway, so years later, I had, you know, John Jorgensen was putting together this, I had left Ricky because sessions were going good, and I was missing a lot of sessions that I wanted to do, you know. And John called and said, hey, they've asked me to play this bluegrass show at this festival. Would you play in the band with me? And I said, yeah, sure. And I said, well, who else is there again? I get called first and don't know who else is in the band. They're just putting it together.
That's great, though.
And he says, well, nobody yet, but I'll figure it out. So anyway, it ended up being Herb Peterson and John Randall.
Yeah, well.
And we went out and did that show. You know, and we just kind of played as friends, just as a hobby. We ended up taking on more shows. And then the Desert Rose Band, this is how I met Chris. So the Desert Rose Band had got a show in Norway at this country music system. And they're basically retired.
Right, yeah, I thought they were, yeah.
And anyway, so Bill Bryson at the time had just passed away, was really sick, and John says, Chris, Connie's wife is going to call you. And she was kind of the road manager for she's another incredible story of her. She was Elton John's manager, and she managed Queen. And
wow.
But she's married to Chris. So anyway, so I went to Norway and played with the Desert Rose Band.
Ah.
And that's how that came about, me being friends with Chris.
Ah. Well, now, did you get to play any of that Django stuff with I
do go out with John every now and then and play the Gypsy.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool too.
Simon, his regular bass player, I filled in for him a few times, you know.
Well, you know, let's see. We go from bluegrass to gypsy swing. I guess that's why you get to work.
Well, you know, it's just like you just kind of learn your parts, you know, and that, you know, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, you're being modest, but I mean, that is, you know, it's a broad spectrum that you do.
Well,
I mean, you between the session work and your road work, you just about covered pretty much the most influential musicians in America.
Well, I've been lucky, you know.
I mean, yeah, I think you probably work hard and get it through that. Well, now, as a producer, you actually produced a friend of mine and a Shelby resident, actually, Darin and Brooke Aldridge.
Oh, yeah.
and actually, that is a fabulous record.
Oh, thanks. It's
good song choices. I don't know if you had something to do with that, but
I did. You know, there was I mean, Darin, you know, they're so good. You know, it don't matter what they sing. It's going to be good. Yeah. You can't mess it up.
Well, you know, you're as good as the song you have, though, a lot of times.
I agree. I think the song, I've always told, song's everything.
Song is everything. I mean, I've known a lot of good singers. It's also why the backup singer sometimes does not make it.
Yeah.
You're as good as the song you got. That's for sure.
Exactly.
So you picked some good ones because that's the best material they've had
well, you know what? We've been kind of with all of this. We've been passing a few songs back and forth to each other, and man, Brooke is writing incredible songs.
Well, oh really? I mean, I knew she wrote.
They are mighty fine, and you know, and man, Darin's a lucky guy.
Yeah, Darin's a lucky guy. Yes, he is. I will tell you, he has the goose that laid the golden egg, I think.
Yeah. But man, they're both talented. Darin's just him and I have never had a disagreement, never even thought about it. We're on kind of the same level of music and stuff. You know, there again, when you approach a record, not to drop names, but going back to the Chris Hillman thing, I'm probably on Chris's last record that Tom Petty produced.
Right. Oh yeah.
And got to hang out with Tom and stuff, and become friends with him and his organization, and there again, their rock music that they played. Well, Steve Ferroni, the drummer, was playing on some of Chris's stuff, and you know, and he played with the Average White Band. You know, he's so great, just an incredible drummer. And Tom would tell him to play simple. You know. Oh yeah. And just because, you know, Tom had this thing that he wanted a lot of people to be able to enjoy it, and it wasn't over anybody's head. And you know, that was kind of my approach to this record. I just thought Brooke and Darin's record that things should just be kind of simple and melodies that people could hold on to and good songs. You know, it doesn't have to have all these crazy production things.
It is a fabulous project, I will say. That is really a good one.
Well, thank you. I'm proud of it. I mean, anytime I get to be around them, you know.
I did not realize you had done that, and I was doing a podcast in the Earl Scruggs Center, and this was during probably Christmas. It was when, you know, when the road slows down, and Darin was there playing with some of the regular guys around here, and he and I got to talking, and he told me that you produced it. And sure enough, I went home and looked at it, and sure enough, you had, you know. So it was like, wow, man. You know, this guy's been my favorite bass player forever.
Gosh, well, that's nice.
You know, I can't believe that he produced this album. I mean, I will say bass players make great producers, though.
Well, I think so, too. You know, you got to listen. That's another thing that I like playing with music with people who listen. I mean, when anybody can play a song and get through it, you know. But
True.
man, to play with a group of players that just take you down a road of playing this song to make you react to different things, you know. Even playing bass with Ricky, I didn't have much, you know, playing bass and just trying to be supportive.
It's not a stretch. I understand what you're saying.
But you would kind of, you know, if Ricky wanted to, you know, play harder, or I would be there with him. It was just and it wouldn't be that way every night, you know.
Oh yeah. That's an important part of music. I mean, dynamics is, particularly with a live show, dynamics is everything. I mean,
and you've got to listen, and I do think bass players probably in bands listen to everything that's going on.
Probably they do, yeah. I would think that too. I mean, I've been a bass player all my life, but a reluctant bass player. It's just that you know, it's easy to find a great guitarist, but it's a little harder to find a bass player, even a bad one.
Oh yeah, well, I know. There is some great bass players come along.
Oh yeah, there
now, and but you know, it's I don't know. I just my approach. I hear guys that can do all this stuff by themselves.
Oh yeah, no.
You know, but when they play with the band, it doesn't quite have that thing of gluing the band together.
No, it doesn't. I mean, there's a couple of really fabulous bass players here who have trouble finding work because it just doesn't fit with what people need to do. You know, sometimes. With great chops,
I always go back to, you can always play simple. And I think it was maybe Chad or maybe Grady Martin or somebody. Some guy was, I think it was Chad. The guy was trying to find something to play in his solo. And and Chet looked at him and said, well, the melody always works.
That's true. It does. I mean,
so just playing bass and giving a good foundation for that singer to sing on.
I agree.
Or the guitar player to play a solo, or the mandolin player, or a piano player, whatever kind of music you're playing,
Lay the foundation, outline the music. That's pretty much,
Yeah.
It's a simple concept that so many bass players never get. I don't.
Yeah, man, I have to say, somebody said something about, man, y'all sound awesome or something. I said, well, man, I'm just enjoying the show.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just back there playing as simple as possible because, in lots of times, even sometimes I'll see how few notes I can play.
Oh, yeah. I do understand that. Yeah.
Because somebody is delivering something, another instrument or something is delivering something that I just really need to get totally out of the way of it. That's kind of always been my approach to it.
Well, and, mine's been, you don't really notice that they're there unless they're not. So
yeah, exactly.
Also, I see you worked. You fill in sometimes on the Grand Ole Opry too.
Yeah. I sub out there. Larry Paxton is the regular bass player out there, and I sub for him in the house band. It varies. Sometimes I'll be out there, a couple of times a month, and sometimes 3 or 4 times a month. Sometimes I won't be out there for 3 or 4 months.
That's I mean, yeah. That's probably one of the more coveted jobs that probably doesn't come open very often.
Well, I started subbing out there when I was with Ricky. Billy Linneman was the bass player, upright bass player, and he had to have some surgery one time, so I ended up subbing for him while I could, if I went out to Ricky. And back then, man, when you subbed, you had to go to the artist to see what the artists were playing. And you'd have to write a quick chart and go out there and play. And, because they didn't really keep charts. These guys just knew these songs for the artists. There's a lot of the older artists,
Right.
But now it's runs so good. They know who you're going to be playing with. And you get the charts, you can access them at all times.
Oh, yeah.
On a web page, and then they send out every week MP3s of the songs you're going to be playing and stuff.
Yeah, that does make it a little easier than winging it, I guess.
Yeah, well, they want it to be good, and it was good back then. But back then you was subbing like for Grandpa Jones and I don't know, whoever else that was out there, that didn't have a band that you were subbing for.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad to do it. I love doing it. I mean, I just I've been able to play the Opry for the last 25 years. I guess maybe longer, and I never take it for granted. I feel the same every time I go out there.
That's great. I mean, I've played it. It's a wonderful experience. I mean, it's it's the holy grail of Nashville, basically.
Oh yeah, well I think so too.
Country music, it is. It's great. I mean,
yeah.
So it's okay. Do you have a favorite job of all time?
You know what? Golly, I there's been so many that I've got to do that I just, so anytime I get to play with Ry, and I still sub with Ricky some. I did a few things with Zach Wild, Ozzy Osbourne's guitar player.
I meant to ask you about that too. That is wild.
Well, that was fun. It was, and Zach, Zach's just, and I didn't really grow up listening to Black Sabbath or Ozzy. I mean, I appreciate how they can do that. I mean, but I was not really into that. And so whenever I got a call from him to play this guitar festival with him, and said, "Well, I'll send you the songs," and a couple of them were Black Sabbath tunes.
Right.
I was like, "Dadgum, these sound just like bluegrass tunes." It's kind of the same scale
right.
that Ralph Stanley sings in.
That's funny. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so I just I told him that. He said, "Oh yeah." He said, I guess the guy that wrote all these songs, from England, he was really into traditional English and Irish music. So
there you go. So.
But Zach was so nice. I mean, just such a great guy. Just very encouraging. He didn't tell me how to play anything or any of that. It was just so
that's
good.
Great. And that was an electric job, I'm sure. That
was an electric job. There's been, several other people I've got to play for like that, that's just been fun,
Well,
Ricky Skaggs, I did some dates with him,
Yeah, Ricky's pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy, so all that stuff's fun. I enjoy doing it all. It's just, I'm happy to play anytime.
I guess you've done all the award shows as house band guy too, probably.
No, you know what? I haven't.
Really?
I've done a few of them, but I've done the CMAs. I never played the Grammys, or any of that. But I've got to go and stuff. I don't know if I'd want to play. It's a lot, man. Those things are so huge and so hard to get into.
Yeah, they are huge. I mean, that is.
Actually, I produced a little track for the CMAs one year that they used on some stuff, but.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but that was years ago.
do we, is this the, this will be probably only for bass players, but you want to talk gear just a little bit?
Sure, sure.
I mean, I know that I guess you have an Ampeg endorsement, I think, right?
Well, you know what, I did, and I used Ampeg for years, and I actually had a Aguilar endorsement too.
That's what I use. I mean, I'm an Aguilar guy, but
well, me too. I love Aguilar, and but here lately, I've been using. There's a local guy here in Nashville, Kevin Shaw, that makes amps, and he's made some really great products. He's restored. Actually, he's been doing stuff for Skaggs too.
Oh, okay.
He's building some DIs and some DIs that can phantom power his pickup and his guitar. And they sound incredible. But I have 3 of his amps, just the amp heads,
right? And
they sound incredible. They just, they're just kind of like Aguilar and stuff. You just plug into them and they sound good.
Right.
You don't have to do a lot. But he's a local guy. He's customized a couple of cabinets for me.
Cool. That's cool. I like it when you can use local people too.
Oh yeah. Well, this guy, he's from Carolina.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure where he's from. Not too far from y'all. I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But he's just a great guy, and he builds these things, and he also has this. I kind of helped him, kind of told him what I wanted, but then he decided. But he has this 2 DI kind of thing with EQ on it.
Yeah.
And you can
that would be nice, yeah.
Basically, you can like set it, and if you want to change it, it does. There's the way that it's set up. It doesn't mess with what's going on in the house. So it's like, and another good thing, if you're playing in a band that you're using in-ear monitors,
right,
then you have a little more control over your in-ear monitors.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, I could see where that would be really useful.
Yeah, but I use it, and you know what? And I have a little Phil Jones amp that I carry around sometimes. Sometimes I go out with Jimmy Fortune some. He's a friend of mine, and his bass player can't go. I did probably, 10 dates with him last year.
No.
But Jimmy's a really good friend. Him and his wife, they come over to the house.
He's another nice guy. Yeah, he's another really nice guy.
But I take that little Phil Jones amp out with him, and it sounds really good,
What do you have one go-to upright, or do you have several?
You know what? I've got several. I've got the upright that I mainly record with is a Juzik and 1929.
Yeah.
And I use Schertler pickups. I've been using those. You know, in a studio, I don't usually use a pickup, just unless the engineer asks. I usually try to avoid it.
Yeah,
you know?
I can understand that in studio, no doubt.
And but I have another bass that was made in Annapolis, Maryland, and I don't know that much about it. It's a carved bass too.
All right.
And it's David Mansbridge. I took it actually out with the Lyle Lovett tour this year on that. I didn't want to take my Jusic out. Then about a year ago, I was able to buy back the bass that I learned to play on.
Oh.
My uncle passed away, and then they were auctioning off a bunch of stuff, and so I was able to buy it back at the auction. So I've got it. Then I have a travel bass that I have where the neck comes completely off the bass.
Yeah, completely off. Yeah. Which would be great to travel with.
Oh yeah, it's a hassle, you know, and I'm still trying to figure it out. This bass is the best out of the ones that I've had for a travel bass, but I'm still not extremely happy with it.
And I guess when you travel, a lot of times you get back lines of some type.
You know what? I will. It's if I know an area or know of a bass or something,
right.
And I will. There's a company called Rocket that I'll use sometimes too that I can ship out if I'm going to be recording.
Right.
Like they'll come to the house and pick up my stuff and ship it out when I get there. That's there.
That's good. Yeah, that's great.
But I use them some, and I try not to take too much to the airport.
Yeah.
I get kind of stressed out because you never know what you're going to get over there.
Yeah, this is true. You don't. That's Now, are you I know probably for most of your work you're low end on the pedals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't think you would have a huge pedal board for.
No, you know what? I've got one, and you know, I've used it sometimes, but not much. I've got a delay kind of thing, right. And then an octave pedal. Then I have this other kind of thing that I've used on some like modern country stuff, and I will sometimes use like distortion or a little bit of fuzz tone.
Right.
And I actually use that quite a bit on a lot of the country things, but just a touch, and even it's just like if you turn up an amp, and you want just that little bit of overdriven sound.
Right.
And that sound actually kind of makes the bass really more up front in the mix, so.
Oh, yeah, well, and I figured you had one you use for studio for sure, but.
Yeah, I do that, and then my electrics, I have several different things that I take more than I need.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I do. Yeah, I do. You got a go-to electric, or you probably have a lot. Depends.
You know what? My electric rig in the studio is I have this old Neve preamp that I've had. Brian Ahern, Emmy Lou's, the guy that produced all of Emmy Lou's, she was married to at one time, produced all those records, had helped me put together my rig for the studio, and it's a Neve preamp, a real Neve.
Wow.
And,
that's really cool. Yeah.
But when I go, I take, I'll take. Let me just say, I'll take 2 or 3 different P basses and a couple of different jazz basses.
Yeah, that's common.
And they're all strung with different kinds of strings.
Okay.
And then I'll usually take, I've got a couple of Sadowskis. I'll take one of them, and then a Penza, which is made in New York.
Right.
It's a really good. That's a 5-string. That's a 5-string. That's the only 5-string I have right now.
I was going there. You're not. Most of your work's done on 4 strings. Is that right?
Well, you know what it really is. I'll take a 5-string, and nobody's seen. Now everybody's kind of, things change. Back in the 80s and the 90s, the 5-string was kind of new to a lot of people, and so people wanted that low thing. Now they kind of don't. Now P basses and jazz basses and passive basses have come back in to being really popular again.
I agree.
And I love it because that's the sound. You
that's
can
the
always
sound.
hear.
Yeah.
You can always hear them on a track.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. That's pretty much my staple too. But
this is a funny story. Emery Gordy Jr. told me this, that Emery's played on all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And he told me that years ago, these guys from Japan, he came to L.A. and had gotten all the session players, him and Lee Sklar, and I think probably Bob Love, and all these guys that were playing on all the records out back there and then, and wanted to design a bass. And so they all told him what they liked, and so they didn't hear from him for about 6 months. And about 6 months later, they came back and said, well, we took everything that y'all said y'all liked and put it on this bass. And they said they opened it up out of the case and said they all looked at each other, and they said they had pretty much invented the Fender Precision.
Yeah, that's great.
That's what they all like.
Oh, I mean, tried and true.
Exactly.
I mean, the longevity of it alone is enough to tell you that it works.
Yeah. So. That or the Jazz. I mean, both of those basses that Leo Fender made, you can hear. I noticed with a lot of modern basses, you can't really hear the bass like you can with just a really good jazz bass or a Precision.
I agree. I agree. I mean, it's I love them. I've owned a lot of different ones, but I, for some reason, go back to those.
Oh, yeah, me too. I do, and I try not to.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried not to too, just because I'm not sure anymore. It's like, oh yeah, you play a P bass. It's like, yeah, I do. I mean, where everybody else is out with something different, but Yeah,
I know, and I just. In the studio, and lots of times a lot of stuff that I use is with flat wound strings too.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm a big flat wound string guy.
And they make modern the flat wound strings sit better in a mix, and and a lot of stuff that people are hearing on the radio that they are flat wound strings, they just don't know it.
Yeah, I mean, I have them without flat wounds, but if I'm coming to play, generally it's going to have a flat wound unless somebody is looking for a different sound. I mean, I'm glad to hear that, because that's good. Sometimes I feel like I'm too old school because I take that stuff.
No, man, that's Pino Palladino. Yeah. He plays, flat wounds.
Sure.
And that gun, man, he sounds just about better than anybody.
He does. He's a fabulous bass player, without a doubt.
And Lee Sklar, he never changes strings, so they're just, they kind of have that flat wound thing going on.
Yeah.
No overtones, and so you can just hear but his bass too is passive. So there's something about a passive bass that just sits.
There is. I mean, I have them that are active, but I like the non-passive ones.
Me too.
I don't know why that is, but I tell you what, you're a busy guy, and I do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Oh man, thanks so much for asking. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Man, it's small town musicians, people don't really realize that it's kind of hard to get to places from small towns, and actually there's a lot of fine musicians in small towns who have either been somewhere and came back. I mean, there's 100 reasons that they're no longer either on a big stage or I mean, it's got nothing to do with talent a lot of times.
Well, every one of us have that thing in it, our sound and stuff, and that doesn't mean anything. It's just it's all about making contacts. And,
it is. I mean,
just staying with it. I mean, it can be a hard thing,
Yeah, I'm sure it's a hard thing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Nashville's hard in good times. So, I would hate to be a young person being out there now.
Well, I know. I see a lot of guys that look like they're playing a lot, and you know they're making $20 a night or whatever.
Yeah, I know it's
and it's just it's a tough time, and you know I just man, I've just always tried to be, you know, open to anything. There seems to be, to me now, a lot of guys that just want to play one kind of music and stuff. I was just never fortunate to do that, you know.
It's a good thing, though. Obviously, it's a blessing because you've played a lot of different styles.
Well, I've just had to do it to make a living.
Well, that too.
You know,
I mean, but the ability to do that is not something everyone has.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
it's in them.
You know, oh well, probably if they're willing to look for it.
Yeah.
So it's open mind, I guess. But I do appreciate you taking the time. I hope at some point we'll get together in person.
Man, well, I hope so too. You know what? I have a bass over at Darin in Brooke's house. I need to come get. If I come over there,
yeah,
I'll holler at you.
Holler at me, and yeah, we'll meet in person. That'd be really good. Again, Mark, thank you so much for doing this.
Man, thank you. So it's good talking to you.
Good talking to you.
Call
too.
me anytime. If you need anything, you
All
call
right.
me.
Sounds good, brother. Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Bye.